In the thriving city of Sunvale, the headquarters of Crown Heights Group was filled with energy. Madame Helena de Rogier, a 50-year-old businesswoman admired across the nation, was minutes away from signing an agreement with Brighton Alliance, a foreign corporation promising vast wealth. Helena had built her company with sweat and sacrifice, starting from a single shop on the roadside. Now, this contract was supposed to seal her greatness forever. Dressed in a royal blue gown and pearl necklace, she sat confidently at the head of the mahogany table, her hand steady on the pen. The directors smiled, the guests clapped, and the cameras flashed. But somewhere deep inside, Helena's spirit was unsettled. Where are you watching from today? Kindly hit like, comment, and subscribe to this channel for more. Just as the signing was about to begin, the back door opened softly. A young cleaner named Susan slipped in with her trolley. She wore a plain uniform, her hair tied back neatly, her eyes alert but humble. "Excuse me, madam," she said politely. "I only need to empty the basket." The executives ignored her, too focused on the deal. But as Susan bent beside Helena's chair, she leaned forward and whispered so quietly only Helena could hear. "Madam, please don't sign. It is a trap." Helena's hand froze, the pen hovering above the page. A heavy silence fell in the hall. Mr. Boniface, her deputy of 17 years, leaned closer with a smile that looked more like a mask. "Madam, why the pause? Everything is in order. This contract will crown our future." Helena glanced at him, then at the foreign investors seated opposite her. Their faces were eager, their eyes a little too sharp, as though hiding something. But Susan's whisper echoed in her ears, drowning out the noise. For the first time in her career, Helena's certainty cracked, and that single hesitation unsettled everyone around the table. "I need a few minutes," Helena declared firmly, pushing her chair back. Murmurs filled the room. Boniface frowned, his voice calm but pressing. "Minutes? Madam, we have spent months preparing. The investors flew in for this moment. You know you can trust me." Helena's gaze hardened. "Trust is precious," she replied, "but it is not blind." She gathered her gown and walked out of the boardroom, leaving startled faces behind. Down the hallway, she caught sight of Susan pushing her trolley quietly. "You," Helena called sharply. The young woman stopped, fear in her eyes. "Come with me now." Inside a small waiting lounge, Helena shut the door and turned with piercing eyes. "Explain yourself. Why did you say I must not sign?" Susan clutched her hands together but spoke with courage. "Because I overheard their meetings, madam. Boniface and Brighton Alliance have twisted the contract. Once you sign, Crown Heights will no longer be yours. You will be left with debts, while they walk away with your empire." Helena's jaw tightened. Her eyes scanned Susan's face. She was young, poor, a cleaner with nothing to gain. Yet her words carried truth. "And why?" Helena asked slowly. "Would a woman like you risk everything to warn me?" Susan lowered her gaze, her fingers trembling slightly. "Because I know what it feels like to lose everything, madam. Years ago, my mother trusted a contract she didn't understand. She signed, thinking it would save our small shop, but instead it left us homeless. I have seen that same trick being prepared against you." Helena felt her chest tighten. The young woman before her spoke with raw pain, not ambition. "And how do you know such details of my contract?" Helena pressed. Susan drew out a small phone from her pocket. "I clean the offices at night. I heard them plotting. I took pictures of the real pages they plan to swap after you sign." Helena's heart skipped. "Show me," she demanded. Susan tapped the phone and opened a gallery of images. There were blurred photos of documents spread across a table, clauses highlighted in red. One page promised Helena 65% ownership, while another, nearly identical, reduced her to only 20%. Helena's breath grew heavy. She had been in business long enough to recognize fraud. "This is treachery," she muttered. Susan nodded gravely. "It is Boniface leading it, madam. He has been working with Brighton Alliance for months. They plan to move your assets into a shell company the moment you sign." Helena turned and paced the small lounge, her heels echoing like drums of war. Boniface had been with her for 17 years. He was like a younger brother, her most trusted deputy, a man who stood beside her when she had nothing. And now, to imagine him conspiring to strip away all she built, it felt like betrayal by blood. "Susan," Helena whispered, "if what you say is true, I must act with wisdom. If I confront them without proof, they will crush me. If I stay silent, I will be destroyed." Susan stepped forward boldly. "Then let us gather proof, madam. Together." Helena stopped and looked deeply into the young woman's eyes. There was honesty there but also courage. She realized Susan was not just a cleaner. She was a survivor shaped by hardship. "If you help me," Helena said, her voice steady, "and this turns out to be false, your life here ends today." Susan swallowed but did not flinch. "Then let it end. But if I keep quiet and you fall, I will never forgive myself." For the first time in years, Helena felt an unexpected alliance forming. It was not with her deputy, not with her board, but with a humble cleaner who dared to speak the truth. Helena straightened her gown and took a deep breath. "Very well, Susan. Bring me every shred of evidence you have. Tonight. Same place. If your proof is solid, then tomorrow will not be their victory. It will be mine." Susan nodded firmly, determination flashing in her eyes. As Helena opened the door to return to the boardroom, she paused for a moment. "Susan," she said softly, "you remind me of the girl I used to be before wealth blinded me to the whispers of ordinary people. Perhaps the gods sent you to remind me." With that, she walked back toward the boardroom, her heart beating with new strength. The battle had only begun. When Helena re-entered the boardroom, the atmosphere was heavy. Boniface leaned back in his chair, masking his impatience with a stiff smile. "Madam, are we ready now?" he asked. Helena forced a calm nod. "Yes, but I have decided the contract requires one final review. We shall reschedule for tomorrow." The foreign investors exchanged nervous glances, and murmurs filled the room. Boniface stood abruptly, trying to control his tone. "Madam, this is highly unusual. We risk losing Brighton Alliance if we delay." Helena met his eyes firmly. "If they cannot wait one night, then they are not worth our future." Her words silenced him, but beneath his smile, she saw his jaw tighten. That night Helena could not sleep. She paced her home in Greenwood Estate, her mind battling doubt and fear. Susan's words haunted her. Could Boniface truly betray her after 17 years? Could the foreigners really be vultures dressed in suits? At midnight her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "I have more proof. Meet me by the staff gate at 6 a.m., Susan." Helena's heart thudded. She whispered a prayer and decided she would go. For once in her life, she would trust a voice from outside her circle of power. At dawn, Helena arrived at the company compound before most employees. Susan was already waiting, holding a small folder. "Madam," she said respectfully, "I copied files from the deputy's office. Look." Inside were scanned documents, bank transfers showing millions of dollars moved from Crown Heights accounts to a company registered overseas. The name on the account chilled Helena. B. Okafor Holdings. "Boniface," she whispered, her hands trembling. "The boy I once called my brother." Susan placed a hand gently on her arm. "Some betrayals cut deepest because they come from those closest to us." Helena's eyes filled with fire. "I built Crown Heights from nothing. I carried bricks when others mocked me. I cannot let them take it away." Susan nodded. "Then we must prepare." "But madam, they already suspect you. Yesterday Boniface was watching me with sharp eyes. They will try to silence anyone who stands in their way." Helena clenched her fists. "Then we must move faster than them. By today, I will gather the board and reveal the truth. But I need you by my side, Susan. You are no longer just a cleaner. You are my ally." Susan's eyes widened, then she bowed her head. "I will not fail you." Later that morning, Boniface barged into Helena's office without knocking. "Why did you delay the signing?" he demanded, his voice coated in false concern. "Madam, you are making us look weak." Helena leaned back in her chair, studying him. "Boniface, patience is the cloth that covers wisdom. Why are you so desperate for me to sign quickly?" His smile faltered, but he recovered. "Because opportunities vanish if you hesitate. Trust me, I only want what is best for Crown Heights." Helena tapped her desk with slow rhythm. "I hope so," she said softly, though in her heart she already knew the truth. That afternoon, Susan quietly slipped Helena a small recorder. "I placed this under Boniface's desk last night," she whispered. Helena pressed play. Boniface's voice spilled out. "Once Helena signs tomorrow, Crown Heights will belong to us. Brighton will handle the paperwork, and I will transfer her shares to the shell company. She will be powerless." Another voice laughed, one of the foreign investors. "She trusts you too much, Boniface. 17 years of loyalty has blinded her." Helena's hands shook as she listened. The betrayal was no longer rumor, it was fact. Helena's chest heaved with anger. For a long moment she stared out her office window, watching Sunvale's busy streets below. 17 years of trust, she muttered. "And this is how he pays me back?" Susan looked at her with quiet determination. "Madam, the gods favor those who act with courage. You cannot let him win." Helena turned and smiled faintly. "Susan, do you know what you have given me?" Susan frowned. "What, madam?" Helena raised her chin. "You have given me back my fire. I will fight, not just for myself, but for every woman who has been told to stay silent." By evening, Helena gathered a few trusted directors in her private lounge. She showed them the documents and played the recordings. Their eyes widened in shock. One elderly board member whispered, "Boniface? The boy you mentored like your own son." Helena's voice trembled, but she remained strong. "Yes, betrayal often wears the face of family. But tomorrow, in the full board meeting, we will expose him and Brighton Alliance." Some directors were afraid. "Madam, this could ruin our reputation." Helena looked at them sharply. Better to be ruined telling the truth than destroyed by lies. That night, Boniface and 2 foreign partners met secretly in a hotel bar across town. "She suspects," one investor whispered nervously. Boniface sipped his drink with a sly smile. "Even if she does, who will believe a woman guided by a cleaner? I am her deputy. I know her weaknesses. When the time comes, I will accuse Susan of stealing company secrets. Helena will be forced to choose, and she will not risk her empire for a janitor." They laughed cruelly, unaware that another hotel worker was recording their conversation from the shadows. At dawn, Helena arrived early at the office once again. Susan was waiting, holding her phone with fresh recordings. "They met last night, madam," she said. "They mocked you. They said you would never defend me." Helena's eyes narrowed, fire burning brighter. "Then they do not know who I am. Tomorrow the story of Crown Heights will change. Susan, prepare yourself. They will try to humiliate you, to paint you as a thief. But stand firm, for the truth will speak louder than their lies." Susan straightened her shoulders. "I am ready, madam. If I lose my job, so be it. But I will not lose my voice." The following morning, the grand auditorium of Crown Heights was filled to the brim. Board members, senior staff, and representatives from Brighton Alliance gathered for what was expected to be a historic signing. Helena sat at the front, her posture regal, her eyes calm but sharp. Beside her stood Boniface, smiling confidently as though the empire already belonged to him. The foreign investors whispered to one another, certain that their trap was about to close. At the back of the hall, Susan stood quietly, her cleaning uniform making her look out of place among suits and gowns. Yet her eyes carried more strength than most of the executives combined. Boniface walked to the podium and cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began smoothly, "we are gathered here to witness a partnership that will change the destiny of Crown Heights. Our visionary leader, Madame Helena, has agreed to sign this contract with Brighton Alliance, securing billions in investment. Applause filled the room, though not everyone clapped with sincerity. Boniface then gestured toward Helena. Before the signing, I must, however, address a grave issue. One that strikes at the heart of our company's integrity. Murmurs filled the air. Helena's brows furrowed as she wondered what he was planning. Boniface's voice grew louder. It has come to my attention that confidential documents were stolen from my office last week. Sensitive papers were photographed without permission, and company secrets compromised. After thorough investigation with security, we found the culprit. His hand pointed like an arrow toward the back of the room. That girl. Susan the cleaner. Gasps erupted. All eyes turned to Susan, who stood frozen yet dignified. Her cheeks burned, but she did not bow her head. Helena clenched her fists, fury rising, but she waited. She wanted to see how far Boniface would go. Guards approached Susan, ready to drag her forward, but she raised her voice boldly. I took those photographs, yes. But not to harm this company, to save it. I discovered treachery in the very office of the man accusing me. The hall erupted into chaos. Boniface banged his fist on the podium. Lies. She seeks to cover her theft with falsehoods. Madam Helena, you know me. I have served you faithfully for 17 years. Who will you believe? A janitor who cleans our floors, or me, your loyal deputy? His eyes gleamed with confidence, certain that Helena would not dare to side with Susan. Helena rose slowly from her seat. The entire hall grew silent. Her voice rang clear. I will believe the truth, no matter the lips it comes from. For truth does not wear uniform or title. It speaks from courage. Boniface faltered, his smile slipping. Helena turned toward Susan. Do you have proof of your words? Susan nodded firmly. Yes, madam. She pulled out her phone and connected it to the projector. Images of the forged contracts appeared on the giant screen. One showing Helena with 65% ownership, another secretly altered to leave her with only 20%. Gasps echoed through the auditorium. The foreign investors shifted uncomfortably, whispering among themselves. Boniface tried to laugh. This is nonsense. Anyone can edit photos on a phone. Do you call this evidence? But before he could continue, Susan played the recordings. Boniface's own voice filled the room. Once Helena signs, Crown Heights will belong to us. She trusts me too much. The investors' faces turned pale. Some directors covered their mouths in shock. Boniface lunged forward in panic, trying to snatch the phone, but Helena raised her hand. Enough! Her voice thundered like a drumbeat. Helena walked to the center of the stage, her head high. For 17 years, I treated you like a son, Boniface. I trusted you with my company, my sweat, my very legacy. And this is how you repay me. With betrayal, with greed, with plots to strip me of everything I built. Boniface's face twisted. You're making a mistake, Helena. Without me you are nothing. Brighton Alliance will crush you. Helena's lips curved into a steady smile. No, Boniface. Without truth you are nothing. Crown Heights will stand, because its foundation is honesty, not lies. At that moment, the doors of the auditorium swung open. 2 government officials and a police officer entered. We received an anonymous report last night, the officer declared. Evidence of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. He held up a folder Susan had quietly delivered earlier. The officer turned to Boniface and the Brighton executives. You are under investigation. Please come with us. Panic spread. One investor tried to protest, but the officer silenced him. Boniface's face went pale as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. Helena, you can't do this. I made you, he shouted as he was dragged away. The hall broke into murmurs of disbelief. Some clapped, others shook their heads in shame for having doubted Helena. Susan stood quietly at the back, her chest rising and falling with relief. Helena turned to the crowd and raised her hands. Let this be a lesson, she declared. Betrayal can come from those closest to us, but so too can salvation come from the humblest hands. Never despise the lowly, for wisdom wears no special garment. Her words echoed like thunder, filling the hall with solemn awe. When the crowd dispersed, Helena sought Susan and drew her forward. "You risked everything for me," Helena said softly, her eyes glistening. "From this day, you are no longer just a cleaner. Crown Heights will find a greater place for your courage." Susan lowered her head, humbled, but tears of gratitude welled in her eyes. "Madam, I only did what was right." Helena touched her shoulder gently. "And that is exactly why this company, and my life, need you." At that moment, in the quiet of the nearly empty hall, two women from different worlds stood side by side, bound not by position but by truth. That evening, Helena sat alone in her office, the city lights of Sunvale glowing outside the tall windows. The events of the day replayed in her mind like a storm. She had lost a deputy she once called family, exposed corruption that nearly destroyed her empire, and discovered unexpected strength in a young woman many dismissed as invisible. For a moment, her shoulders sagged under the weight of it all. But then she remembered Susan's unwavering courage, and she straightened again. "The battle is not the end," she whispered to herself. "It is the beginning of something new." The next morning, Helena called an emergency meeting of her trusted directors. "Crown Heights must rebuild its honor," she declared. "Our name was dragged through the mud by betrayal, but we will rise cleaner and stronger." Some directors nodded, others remained cautious. One elder asked, "And the role of Susan, madam?" The staff whisper about her. Some mock her, others admire her. "What will you do with her?" Helena smiled faintly. "She saved us all. She deserves more than whispers." The directors exchanged curious glances, wondering what she meant. Meanwhile, Susan walked through the corridors of Crown Heights, her uniform still plain but her head held higher than before. Some staff greeted her warmly, others avoided her, ashamed that they had once looked down on her. A group of junior employees whispered, "That's the girl who stopped the fraud. Imagine, a cleaner braver than the board." Susan pretended not to hear, but inside, her heart swelled with both pride and humility. She had risked everything, and though fear had gripped her many times, she had not wavered. Later that afternoon, Helena invited Susan into her office. The young woman entered hesitantly, clutching her hands together. "You asked for me, madam." Helena rose and walked toward her with a calm smile. "Susan, do you know why I built this company?" Susan shook her head. "It was not for money or fame," Helena continued, "but to prove that a woman could stand where men once ruled. I built it to inspire others. And today you inspired me. You showed me that courage is not born in offices, but in the heart." Susan's eyes glistened with tears. Helena walked to her desk and pulled out a letter. "This is an appointment," she said, handing it to Susan. "From this day forward, you will no longer work as a cleaner. You are hereby my special assistant in the office of the chief executive." Susan's mouth fell open, her hands trembling as she held the paper. "Madam, I don't deserve this." Helena placed a hand on her shoulder. "You deserve more than this. But we will start here. Your voice will no longer be silenced. You will sit in rooms where truth must be spoken." News of Susan's appointment spread quickly through the company. Some scoffed, saying it was madness to elevate a janitor to such a position. Others applauded Helena's decision, calling it a bold step for justice. The newspapers picked up the story. From mop to boardroom, cleaner who exposed fraud becomes CEO's assistant. Critics argued that she was inexperienced, but supporters hailed it as proof that integrity could rise above class. Susan herself felt overwhelmed, but every time doubt crept in, Helena's words returned. "Courage is not born in offices, but in the heart." Days turned into weeks, and Susan proved her worth. She organized files with precision, kept detailed notes in meetings, and often pointed out small discrepancies that others overlooked. Helena found herself leaning on her more and more. One afternoon, after a tense negotiation with foreign investors, Helena whispered, "If not for you, I might have signed blindly again. You see things I cannot." Susan smiled shyly. "Perhaps because I was trained by hardship to notice what others ignore." Both women shared a quiet laugh, the bond between them deepening beyond titles. Yet challenges remained. Boniface, though disgraced, still had loyal allies outside. Rumors spread in the press that Helena was reckless, that she relied too much on a former cleaner. Anonymous letters threatened Susan, warning her to step down or face consequences. One evening, Helena found Susan sitting in her office, staring at one such letter with trembling hands. "Do not let fear consume you," Helena said gently, sitting beside her. "I too once received threats when I started. But fear is the chain that keeps the powerful in control. We will not wear it." Together, they decided to turn the threats into strength. Helena announced a new campaign, Crown Heights Integrity Initiative. It promised fair hiring, transparent contracts, and whistleblower protection for all staff. "If a cleaner can save a company, then every voice matters," Helena declared at the launch. Susan stood beside her, applauded by hundreds of employees. For the first time, she felt not like an outsider, but like a torchbearer of change. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline of Sunvale, Helena and Susan stood on the rooftop of Crown Heights. The city buzzed below them with lights and life. Helena looked at her young ally and said, "Susan, today I see myself many years ago. A woman underestimated, yet unshaken. The journey ahead will not be easy, but together we will face it." Susan nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "Madam, you gave me a chance when the world saw me as nothing. I will stand by you, no matter the storm." Their hands clasped firmly. Two women from different worlds, united by truth, courage, and destiny. Weeks later, Crown Heights began to recover its reputation. Clients who once doubted Helena returned, impressed by her bravery in exposing corruption. Yet enemies did not rest. Boniface, though facing trial, still had allies in the shadows. Rumors were planted in newspapers, claiming Helena was manipulated by Susan, a mere cleaner, who now whispered in her ear. But Helena never faltered. At a press conference, she stood tall and declared, "Do not measure a person by their past, but by the truth they carry. This company stands today because a woman of courage refused to be silent." Susan stood at her side, her eyes shining with pride. The trial of Boniface began in Sunvale High Court. Each day, the nation watched as evidence was presented. Fraudulent contracts, secret bank transfers, and recordings of his betrayal. Boniface sat in the dock, his once arrogant face now hardened with bitterness. When Susan testified, her voice was steady. "I was a cleaner. They thought I was invisible. But I saw what they tried to hide. And I chose truth over fear." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Even the judge looked at her with admiration. Helena's turn to testify came. She faced Boniface with calm authority. "For 17 years, I trusted you as family. But you chose greed. Let this be a lesson to our nation, that betrayal may prosper for a night, but truth always rises with the dawn." Boniface lowered his head, unable to meet her gaze. After weeks of hearings, the verdict was delivered. Guilty of fraud, conspiracy, and theft. He was sentenced to 17 years in prison. As he was led away, he muttered, "Helena, you will regret this." But Helena only lifted her chin higher. Back at Crown Heights, the victory was celebrated. Staff danced in the courtyard, drummers beating rhythms of joy. Helena addressed them. "This triumph is not mine alone. It belongs to every worker, every staff member, every voice that dared to speak truth. And above all, it belongs to Susan, who showed us that the lowliest can become the bravest." The crowd roared with applause, chanting Susan's name. Tears rolled down the young woman's cheeks as she realized her life had changed forever. Not long after, Helena called Susan into her office again. "You have been my assistant, but today I ask more. I want you to lead the new integrity department, a division that will guard this company against fraud and corruption. It will be your responsibility to ensure what nearly destroyed us never happens again." Susan gasped. "Madam, me?" Helena smiled. "Yes, you. Who else has eyes sharp enough to see what others ignore? You have earned this seat with courage, not with titles." Slowly, Susan accepted, her heart full of gratitude. The Integrity Department was launched, and Susan became its first director. Staff who once mocked her now greeted her with respect. She set up channels for workers to report wrongdoing, and soon employees from the lowest cleaner to the highest manager felt empowered to speak. Crown Heights transformed into a symbol of fairness across Sunvale. Newspapers published stories praising Helena's bold leadership and Susan's rise. "From mop to director, how courage saved Crown Heights," one headline read. The story inspired women across the country to believe that their voices, too, mattered. Yet Helena knew their journey was bigger than one company. She and Susan began visiting universities, markets, and youth forums, telling their story. "Do not wait for a title to speak truth," Helena would say. "Integrity is your true crown." Susan often added softly, "I was invisible, but the day I chose to stand for what is right, my life changed. Yours can too." Everywhere they went, people rose to their feet in applause. They were no longer just businesswomen. They had become symbols of courage. One evening, after returning from a community forum, Helena and Susan sat in the quiet rooftop garden of the company building. The city lights twinkled below them. Helena looked at her young ally with pride. "Susan, I once thought I would leave this company with only money as my legacy. But now I see that my true legacy is the people I lift." Susan smiled gently. "And you lifted me, madam. When the world saw a cleaner, you saw a voice. I will never forget." Both women clasped hands, a bond unshaken by storms. As the years passed, Crown Heights flourished. Helena, now older and wiser, began to step back from daily management, allowing Susan to shine more brightly. Staff and clients admired the younger woman's discipline and honesty. She became known across Sunvale as the guardian of integrity. Whenever asked about her success, Susan always said, "I was a cleaner, had nothing, but one day I chose truth. And that choice opened doors no key could ever unlock." Her humility touched everyone who heard her. In the end, the tale of Helena and Susan became more than a company story. It became a folktale retold in villages, schools, and churches across the land. Elders would say, "Remember Crown Heights, where a queen of business nearly lost everything, but was saved by the courage of a cleaner." Children listened with wide eyes, learning that greatness does not come from riches alone, but from honesty and courage. And so, Helena's empire endured, and Susan's name was etched into the heart of Sunvale as proof that even the lowliest can rise to become guardians of truth.